Hello and welcome to Nithrania YouTube channel. You're watching another episode of the Game in a Nutshell series designed for explaining the board game rules. My name is Branislav Berec, and in this video we're going to learn how to play another game from Martin Wallace, designer of Brass, called Anno 1800, which is based on the video game with the same name, and both Anno 1800 and Brass are games from roughly the same era, the same industrial era. And with the similar theme, in Anno 1800 we're going to build supply chains, build the industries, and score victory points. To set the game up, prepare the game board and make sure all these construction tiles are placed on their corresponding spaces. Place these population cubes in the designated space next to the game board. And the same applies for these New World islands and the Old World islands. Shuffle the 3 population decks and place them on their corresponding spaces on the game board. And shuffle the deck of expedition cards and place those on the game board as well. Finally, shuffle these mission cards and randomly draw 5 of those cards and place them face up. And for your first game, instead of drawing the cards randomly, you can choose these 5 recommended mission cards. Then each player will take 1 home island, 4 farmers, 3 workers and 2 craftsmen. And since you have 7 green and blue cubes in total, you will draw 7 population cards for farmers and workers. And similarly, since you have 2 craftsmen, you will draw 2 population cards of this type. Then place 1 token of the corresponding type on each ship and randomly determine the starting player who will take this first player token. Then the second player in the player order will take 1 gold, third player would take 2 gold, and the fourth player would take 3 gold. The game is played in turns, starting with the first player and then continuing in a clockwise direction. Players take turns until one of the players triggers the end of the game, then you will finish the current round and then take 1 more final round of the game. After that the game will be over. On your turn you can do one of the following actions. First, you can build. If you have the required resources, you can take 1 tile from the game board and build it on your island. The second option is to play a card from your hand. Again, you have to have those resources available, and then you play the card face up in front of you. If you don't like the cards in your hand, as a third option, you can change up to 3 cards from your hand for the cards of the same type from this draw decks. The fourth option is to increase the working power, which means you add more workers to your island. To do so, again, you have to have the resources available. The next option is to level up, which means you upgrade your worker to the next level. With 1 action you can upgrade up to 3 of your workers. Then the next action available is to unlock the Old World, which allows you to expand your home island, or explore the New World, which gives you access to new resources in the game. The last option is to draw these expedition cards, which give you additional endgame scoring opportunities. You will score victory points for all the population cards you will play in front of you, then for these expedition cards, for these mission cards, and then the player who triggered the end of the game will take this fireworks token, and that's worth 7 victory points. Then the player who has the most points is the winner. Now, I will cover all the actions in the game in more detail, and I will start with the build action. With the build action, you can take 1 tile from the game board, produce or pay the required resources, and then build the tile on your island. Since resources are an essential part of the game, let me talk about those first. To produce the resource, first you have to have the industry tile that produces those resources, and then you have to move 1 cube from this residential area to one of the open job spaces on that industry tile. The color of the cube and the color of those job spaces have to match. So to produce one of the resources from the slaughterhouse, I have to move the green cube to one of the open job spaces in the slaughterhouse. Sometimes the cost of the tile is not a resource but a cube of a specific color. In that case, you have to have that cube in the residential area and then you exhaust that cube, which means you place it somewhere next to your player board to the exhausted area. The same applies to these naval tiles. Anytime you have to use this trade tile or the exploration tile, you have to exhaust them. If you need a specific resource, let's say these windows, and you either don't have that resource or all the job spaces are occupied, then you can trade that resource with another player. The other player obviously must have that resource and they may not deny that trade. You can trade that resource even if all the job spaces on that industry tile are already occupied. To perform this trade, you have to exhaust these trade tokens, and the number of those tokens is shown over here in the residential area. So if you want to trade the red resource, you have to pay 2 trade tokens. For any green resources, it would be 1 token, and so on and so forth. As a compensation, the other player gains 1 gold. You may trade each resource maximum once per turn, and you may never trade with yourself. If you don't have the cubes you need in this residential area, or you have the job spaces already occupied, you can pay gold to return those cubes back to that residential area. The cost for returning the cubes this way is again shown over here on these residential spaces. So for returning the red cube back to the residential area, I have to pay 3 gold. For returning the green cube, I would have to pay 1 gold, and so on and so forth. So to build the chosen tile, you have to produce or pay those resources. In this case, it's 1 coal and 1 resource from the slaughterhouse. Then flip the tile to the other side and build it on the island. You can build it in any legal space. There are 3 types of these construction tiles in the game. All the tiles over here, except for this corner, are called industry tiles. These are docks, and these tiles are ships. Industry tiles can be built in any of these land spaces, so 2nd, 3rd and 4th row. Docks can only be built in this 4th row. It's the coastal area, which means it's the land area with the coast. And ships can only be built in this 5th row. These are called sea spaces. When you build the industry tiles, you may build maximum 1 tile per turn. Then you can have maximum 1 tile of each type, so you may not have 2 identical tiles. However, there are some resources, identical resources, which may be produced with different types of population cubes. In that case, you are allowed to have these 2 types of buildings on your home island. If you wouldn't have enough spaces available, or even if you do, you may place the new tile on top of another tile on your home island. You can overbuild a pre-printed tile, or you can even overbuild the tile you have built previously. In that case, the tile that was overbuilt will be returned back to the game board. So this way it becomes available for other players. When you overbuild the space with any population cubes, those are exhausted. Docks can only be built in this coastal area, and again you can build maximum 1 tile per action. Unlike these industry tiles, you can have any number of docks of any type. Now, ships can only be built in these sea spaces, and there's an exception here. You can build as many ships as you have docks. Again, similar to docks, you can have any number of ships of any type. Each dock can build maximum 1 ship per turn, and the number in the steering wheel indicates the strength of the ship that dock can produce. So the dock with a strength of 1 can only produce ships with a strength of 1, which means with 1 symbol in the bottom right hand corner. Docks with the number 2 can produce ships with a strength of 2 or strength of 1. Any dock can produce both the trade ships or the exploration ships. So after paying the indicated resources, place the ship on the sea space and immediately place the corresponding number of the indicated tokens on that ship. You build those ships one by one, So after building the ship, and if you have the trade token on that ship, you can exhaust that token immediately to trade the resources required to build other ships. To play the card from your hand, choose the card and pay the indicated resources. If you don't have them on your home island, you can trade those resources. And the card is placed face up in front of you in your player area. Then anytime on your turn, even immediately, you can activate that card and gain the indicated bonus. After that, flip the card face down to indicate that it was already activated. Since activation is a free action, you can activate any number of cards that are face up in front of you during the same turn. Don't discard the card you have played and activated, they will be scored at the end of the game. When you don't like the cards in your hand, you can exchange up to 3 cards for new cards from the draw decks. Return the chosen cards to the bottom of the respective decks and then draw the same number of cards from the top of those decks. Then take those cards into your hand. With that, your action is over. When you increase the working power, you may add up to 3 population cubes to your home island. For each cube you add, you have to pay the required resources. Newly added cubes can be used to pay for other cubes. Then, for each cube you add, you have to draw 1 new population card. When you add a farmer or worker, you draw 1 card from this deck. When you add a craftsman, engineer or investor, you will draw 1 card from this deck. When the draw deck is empty, when you take the farmer or the worker, instead of drawing a card, you actually have to pay 1 gold. Similarly, when you take a craftsman, engineer or investor, you have to pay 3 gold if there's no card available. When you level up, you can do up to 3 upgrades of your cubes. Upgrading a cube means taking a cube of 1 color and exchanging it for a cube of the color of the next tier. So upgrading green to blue, blue upgrades to red, and so on and so forth. The cost for upgrading the cube is in between those spaces in the residential area. So upgrading green to blue costs 1 brick. Return the cube that is being upgraded to the general supply and take the upgraded cube. You don't have to upgrade the cubes in the residential area, you can even upgrade the cube which is already on some of your industry tiles. In that case, it may happen that some of those cubes may have a different color than the color of that industry tile temporarily. When you level up, since you don't add any new cubes, you also don't draw any new population cards. With the action called Unlock the Old World, you can take this Old World tile and expand your own island. To do so, you will have to use and exhaust these exploration tokens. When you take the Old World tile for the first time in the game, you have to exhaust 1 exploration token. When you do it for the second time in the game, you have to exhaust 2 tokens, and so on and so forth. You may not have more than 4 Old World tiles on your home island. So, after paying the indicated number of exploration tokens, take the top Old World tile and place it face up next to your home island. Take the depicted bonuses immediately. Some of those Old World tiles may have pre-printed industry tiles, and in that case, you are allowed to have 2 identical industry tiles on your home island. When you explore the new world, you can discover new islands with new resources. It works in the exact same way as discovering the old world, so you have to pay these exploration tokens. When you take the tile for the first time in the game, you have to exhaust 1 exploration token. When you do it for the second time, you exhaust 2 exploration tokens, and so on and so forth, and you can have maximum 4 new world tiles on your home island. After paying the resources, take the top tile and place it somewhere next to your player area. You may trade these resources with the trade tokens, and you may trade as many resources of any type during the same turn. However, you are the only player who can trade these resources. Other players are not allowed to use trade tokens to trade these resources. In addition to the New World tile, you also draw immediately 3 new population cards from this New World deck. Place those cards into your hand and they work exactly the same way as other population cards. Finally, when you spend 2 exploration tokens, you can take up to 3 expedition cards. Those expedition cards are not in your hand, which is important for the endgame trigger conditions. You can still keep them in your hand, or you can have them somewhere next to your player area face down, and obviously you can look at those cards anytime you want. Expedition cards are not used during the game, they provide additional influence points or victory points at the end of the game. Each card depicts 2 symbols, one is the animal and the other is an artifact, and if you have the cube of the color, which is the background color of those symbols, at the end of the game you will place those cubes on those symbols and that will give you the victory points depicted below that space. When you don't want to or you cannot play any of the previously mentioned actions, you can celebrate a city festival. That means you will take all the population cubes and return them back to the residential area, and you will return all the naval tokens to their respective ships. This doesn't cost any resources, it's for free, however, you have to use your action to do that. When any player plays the last card from their hand, the end of the game is triggered. When that happens, finish the current round and then play one last final round. After that, the game will be over. The player who triggered this end of the game gains these fireworks tokens, which is worth 7 victory points at the end of the game. Now calculate your scores. First, sum up all the victory points from the population cards you have played, so not from the cards you would still have in your hand. These cards score 3 victory points, these one 5, and these 8 victory points. Then populate the expedition cards with your workers. For each space with a worker, you will score the indicated number of victory points. You don't have to fill all the spaces on the card. In this case, for this card, you would only score 2 victory points. Then score the victory points for mission cards. The player who triggered the end of the game adds additional 7 victory points. And if you have any leftover gold, for each 3 gold resources, you would also score 1 additional victory point. Then the player with the most points is the winner. So that's how you play Anno 1800. If you have any questions or comments, I'll be happy to answer those questions. If you like the series, please subscribe. You can even support the channel on the Patreon page. My name is Branislav Berec. You've been watching Game in a Nutshell and hope to see you next time.